Hey everybody, Manny Talavera here, and this is episode 3 of Marketing Bedtime Stories with Manny Talavera. And this one is all about money math, transaction size, and runway. And so we're going to talk a lot about money math and millionaire marketing formulas. We're going to kind of give you some insights there, and we're just going to give you a lot of things to think about as it pertains to the money math, those transaction sizes, and also we're going to talk a lot about runway. Now, again, just to kind of give you a disclaimer, the reason I keep messing with my camera is I'm in an office chair that starts out way up here, and then I slowly keep falling. And if I don't continue to adjust my camera, I will look like I'm a dwarf in about 5 minutes because the chair falls. Now, what's interesting is out in the hallway, I've got an office chair that's been sitting there for 8 months in a box that I have yet to put together. I'm ultimately going to have to do that at some point. And so hopefully we will get to where we're not having to do that. So we're going to move forward here, and we're going to start out talking about the money math or the millionaire marketing formulas. You see these a lot in charts on Facebook, and it's basically all these formulas for getting to $1 million. And they're very popular. And if you post them on Facebook, if you got a group, people go crazy. They think you've invented fire. They think it's the end of the world, and they're very popular. But I didn't used to like them, and the reason I don't like them is because they don't tell the story. And if you've been following what I'm talking about, money comes from creating something commercial that a lot of people want to buy. So the first thing, we've got something commercial people are willing to give us money for. And the second thing is a group of people who can buy it. And so these formulas don't mean anything unless you have that thing. And that's where a lot of people miss the mark. And the other reason I don't like them is I think within reason, like I believe in the quick and the dead. Like, you know, if you can't get this really fast, if you're not really fast on all this, you're going to struggle to make it. You've got to be very quick about all of this. You should be able to do every single one of these money math formulas in your head. You should know them without looking at a chart. And I think anyone that needs to look at a chart to understand any of this is in big trouble. So within reason, if someone says they make $20 or $30 or $40 or $50 an hour, you should immediately say $30 an hour, around $60 a year, $50 an hour, around $100,000 a year. $100 an hour is around $200,000 a year. Now it's not exactly, because we're doing 50 math instead of times 50 instead of times 52. We're just rounding a little bit, but within reason, you should know. Like I said, and the money math charts are the same thing, or the millionaire marketing formulas are the same thing. You should be able to do those very quickly in your head, and you should already know them. And so I'm going to walk you through them. I'm going to tell you what the importance of them are, and then we're going to talk about transaction size, and then we're going to talk about runway. So very simple. If you're selling something at $1, you need 1 million buyers. Selling something at $2, you need 500,000 buyers. If you're selling something at $100, you need 10,000 buyers. If you're selling something at $200, you need 5,000 buyers. If you're selling something at $250, you need 4,000 buyers. If you're selling something at $500, you need 2,000 buyers. At $1,000, you need 1,000 buyers. At $2,000, you need 500 buyers. At $2,500, you need 400 buyers. At $5,000, you need 200 buyers. At $10,000, you need 100 buyers. And so, like I said, most people don't understand any of this. They can't do that in their head. And so, like I said, my mindset is always this: the minute someone says they're selling something at $1,000, I know the second they say 1,000, like in a millisecond, you need 1,000 buyers to get to the million. If you're selling something at 1,000, and that the minute they say 2,500, I know in a millisecond 400 buyers. So, like I said, you got to be able to do this math very fast. And now the importance of this math isn't the math. The importance of it is reverse engineering the math. And so what you should start out with is the goal, then you reverse engineer the goal. If you're selling something at 1,000, you're wanting to make 1,000,000, you're selling something at 1,000, you need 1,000 buyers. Now, if you're getting a 5% conversion rate and you're selling something at $1,000, that means you need to put 20,000 people through that conversion rate mechanism in order to make the 1,000. So let's say that conversion mechanism is a funnel, a webinar. People who go all the way through the webinar, 5% of those people buy. So we need 20,000 people to go all the way through the webinar. Well, what about the people that don't? But this is the thing. You're never going to get like 20,000 people join the webinar and 20,000 people buy, because you got people that sign up for the webinar that don't even get in the webinar. You got people who sign up for the webinar who don't stay through the end of the webinar. So it takes 20,000 people to complete the webinar. How many webinar attendees do we need? Because not all of them are going to stay. And how many attendee signups do we need? Because not everyone who signs up is going to actually go, get in the webinar. And so if you keep reverse engineering this, you get to a click. How much is it costing me to get a click or to get me an opt-in, to get me a webinar attendee, to get me a webinar attendee that stays to the end, to get me a buyer? And that gives you an idea of what all of this looks like, and then you can reverse engineer the whole process. Now the thing is, you might end up being able to get a 10% opt-in, 10% conversion rate. You might be able to somehow get a 20% conversion rate, or your conversion rate might be 3%. But once you understand all of this and you start putting people through a funnel, then what you can do is you can take all that information, and then what you do is you keep trying to optimize it. So what we do is we create a funnel that works, and we keep putting in people into that funnel, but we don't break that funnel. We keep trying to test different things to get a better optimization at every place where the funnel is breaking. And that's what you want to think about. And then the thing is, you look at all of the different places where the funnel breaks, and you try and fix those things. And so, like I said, the money math, the millionaire marketing formulas, you got to get all of that. You got to understand it. And so just to walk you through it again, if you're selling at the $250 price point, you need 4,000 buyers. If you're selling at the $500 price point, you need 2,000 buyers. If you're selling at the $1,000 price point, you need 1,000 buyers. At the $2,000 price point, you need 500 buyers. At the $2,500 price point, you need 400 buyers. At the $5,000 price point, you need 200 buyers. At the $10,000 price point, you need 100 buyers at 10 grand. And so, like I said, you should be aware of these. You should be able to do them in your head. That's the first part of this. And then you need to start thinking about the reverse engineering of that process to get to that amount of buyers and what that's going to look like. And so when we're thinking about millionaire marketing formulas, you gotta think about all of that. You gotta think about what that looks like. Now, the next thing that we want to think about is transaction size. And transaction size is extremely important if you want to make $1 million, because the transactions, because it's it's the problem with the lower transaction size is what you want to think about is problems, customer service issues, or what we would call tickets. And so if you're selling something at $1,000 price point and you make $2 million, that means you got 2,000 buyers. Right? Well, 2,000 buyers equates to a lot of tickets, a lot of customer service problems. And customer service problems or ticket problems, when you're selling a course, which is what most people would be selling at $9.97 or whatever, is opt-in problems, login problems. I lost my password. I can't access my email. And it's generally a user problem. It's not your fault. So it doesn't matter if you're using Kajabi or ClickFunnels or Thinkific or Teachable. It doesn't matter which of those you're using. What does matter, though, is that at the lower transaction size, it takes a lot more buyers to get to the million, and more buyers equals more customer service problems. And so, like I said, with 1,000 to 2,000 people, you're going to have a lot of tickets, and tickets are a pain. And like I said, most of the time it's, I lost my password, I forgot my password, I can't access my content. Um, give you an example. My niece, she um, she gets a new telephone, new cell phone every 60 days. So she loses it, she breaks it, someone steals it, she sells it, whatever happens. Every 60 days, new cell phone number, new Facebook account, because she can't remember the old Facebook account. So she can't get into the old Facebook account. So she's got a new Facebook account. So I've got 4,200 friends on Facebook, and 200 of them are her, because every 2 months she gets a new one, right? And what you want to think about is that $500 and $1,000 price point, you're going to have a lot of problems with the same people, and they're going to be recurring. They're going to be over and over, because people who have problems. A lot of it is people get, like my niece, not only does she get locked out of her Facebook account, she gets locked out of her email and her email. So it's all of these issues. And that's what you're going to have at that lower price point. Now, what's interesting is when you go to the $5,000 price point, a higher transaction size, if you're at $1 million, you go from 1,000 people at 1,000 customer service people to 200 customer service people. And generally, when you go from 1,000 customer service to 200 customer service, you go from many tickets to no tickets, because while the people at the $5,000 price point will all still have their own set of issues and their own set of problems, generally they don't have the login, I lost my password, like beginner problems, because people generally at the $5,000 to $7,500 price point are a little bit more sophisticated. They generally have an ongoing concern, a business. They generally have support. They have help. And so generally they can get it figured out. And the other thing is there's only 200 of them rather than 1,000. And so the first thing that you do is you remove 80% of your problems, because you remove you basically cut the size of the amount of people you're dealing with significantly. But the other thing is that those people tend to be more sophisticated, and they can generally navigate. If you're giving them login information, they generally can navigate that. And so your millionaire marketing formulas, you should know them. You should know them by heart. You should be able to remember them. And then the main thing is you need to understand that we're going to learn those so that we can reverse engineer the process in order to get people to buy. And then when we're thinking about transaction size is extremely important if you want to make $1 million. Another issue is that getting buyers is very expensive, and it's very difficult to make the math work on a $250 or $500 transaction, and almost even on a $1,000 transaction. But on a $5,000 transaction, it's easier to make the math work. And so what we're talking about there is how much is it costing us to get a $1,000 buyer to $5,000 buyer, because if you're selling to $5,000 buyers, you can spend $1,000 to get a buyer on a $5,000 buyer, and you can still make $4,000 per buyer, where you can't really spend $1,000. I mean, you could spend $1,000 to get a $1,000 buyer, but you're not making any money on that. And so, like I said, the thing is, when you move up in transaction size, there's a lot more you can do creatively and marketing wise to get those people to move forward and give you the money. And there's still a metric ton of net after when you get a sale. And so the problem with the $1,000 transaction size is if it's cost you $500 to get a $1,000 buyer, you're making $500. If it costs you $1,000 to get a $5,000 buyer, you're making $4,000. And so in terms of transaction size, the higher the transaction size, the better it is, and the easier it is to make money from that transaction size. And so, to kind of give you some indication of what all of this looks like, if you look at 3 to 5 years ago, 6 years ago, people were spending, there were a lot of people selling $997 courses, and they did very, very well. And they made millions and millions of dollars. And to get a buyer at $997, it was costing them anywhere from $60 to maybe $120. So they still had very good deal flow. They were still making money, and it worked really, really well. And these were what we would call webinar buyers. And so we were putting people through a funnel that would get them into a webinar that would get them to buy. And then the market changed, and you saw more people. Then a few years later, what you saw is that people were more interested in $5,000 coaching programs or $5,000 courses with some coaching, like question and answer interaction, or some kind of mastermind or something like that. And so it was either, like I said, modulated course, which is a course with live question and answer or some interaction or some coaching. And that's where the market went to. Now, those people were not webinar buyers. They were called to close. And so they were phone buyers. And so they were sold by telephone calls. And that worked really, really, really well. And what you see in our marketplace right now, this time, you're seeing a lot of people buying through five-day challenges. And so we went from webinars to call closes to 5-day challenge. And this is challenges. And this is the thing. I'm not saying webinars don't work anymore. I'm not saying call closes don't work anymore. I'm just telling you where the market's going and what we're seeing a lot more of. And all I'm saying is that webinars were really, really good 5 or 6 years ago. And again, like I said, $60 to $120 per sale. And now you can still probably do that as far as a webinar close, but your transaction costs are going to be much higher. It might be $200 or $250 to get a $1,000 buyer from a webinar. Still good money. You can still make a living at that. And if you can scale something to 2 or 3 million, you'll do well. But on a $1 million sale, $1 million in sales, if it's costing you $250 to get the sale, you're $250,000 in expense to get that buyer. And so you're netting $750 or grossing $750 after ad cost on those transactions. And you want to think about that. And so, so now what we're going to talk about for just a few minutes is runway. And runway is in my opinion, like, it's something that no one talks about. I think it's very, very important. I think all of these things are extremely important, especially reverse engineering the math. But what most people don't think about is runway, or how much it's going to cost to scale something. Now, this is the thing. So when we talk about, we want to make $1 million and we're doing webinar close, it might cost us $250,000. I'm not saying that you need $250,000 to make the million. I'm not saying that at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'll kind of explain it to you in a different way. I've got a couple of friends or people I used to hang out and associate with, and they would bring me idea after idea after idea. And we're always trying to figure out a way to make $1 million. The problem with most of their ideas involved something that could get us put in jail for a very, very long period of time, number one. Or number two, it was going to cost us 50 or 100 or $200 million to do. And so, my friend would say, hey, I've got this idea. We're going to make a car, that gets 300 miles to the gallon. And the only thing that we need to make a car is we need 200,000 employees and we need 50 factories. And all we need to do to make $1 million is we need $500 million to build this factory and build this car. So that ain't going to work very well. If we had the 500 million, we wouldn't want to need to make the million to begin with. And so that's not the way it works. But when we're talking about scaling to $1 million, even if it costs you $500,000, to make the first million. And I really feel like that even if you spent 50% on ad costs and made 500,000 on the first million, you'd make the second and third and fourth million and would cost you less and less and less each time. And eventually you'd be able to make the million with no ad costs, because you'd have all of these people on email lists, all these people in private Facebook groups, all these followers on these different channels. And so you can do really, really well even if you only make half the money on the first round. But like I said again, even if it costs you $500,000, I'm not saying that you need the $500,000 up front. That's not at all how any of this works. What you need is runway. And runway is the amount of money that it's going to take to get the airplane off the ground and get altitude. And altitude is all about scaling. And so it's about taking this idea that you have, getting it in front of a metric ton of people, and getting enough buyers that it starts taking off. And you're making 10,000 and then 20,000 and then 40,000 and then 80,000 and all of that, right? But what we need the money, we need the runway, which is enough money to get the airplane off the ground. And depending on what your situation is, that number might be 10,000, it might be 30,000. It's like I said, there are going to be some variables there, but that's what you want to think about. Now the big problem is, the two biggest problems with all of this. Number one, most people don't have enough runway. They don't even think about runway. They don't realize they're going to need that money. And then number two, most people don't do what they need to do to get the thing scaled and get to the million, because what they do is they go south, they take money off the table, they start investing the money that they're making from this thing in lifestyle. And so what they do is let's say the number is 10,000 to get off the ground, and they take the 10,000, they start making 30,000 a month. Well, what a lot of people do, they're investing 10, they're bringing in 30, so they're making 20. And so what they do is they take most of that 20 and they start spending it on lifestyle, on cars and clothes and apartments and vacations and all of that. And so they have this $20,000 a month lifestyle, and they continue to spend $10,000 a month on ads to bring in the 30 or whatever that looks like. The key to a million is doing the complete opposite and not taking any money off of the table. So the deal is, you got to not adjust your lifestyle until you blew the thing up. And what I mean by that is, we're going to take 10 grand, and if we make 30 the first month, the next month we're spending 30. And if from 30 we make 90 the next month we're going to spend 90. And if we make 90 that month, the next month we're going to make 270. And the month after that, we're going to spend 270. And if we spend 270, if we're tripling every time, if we're tripling our ad spend and revenue at 270, we're going to make, well, what is that? 810 or something like that, close to 800,000 if my math's correct, right? And so you just got to continue to roll the money over. And most people are not willing to roll the money over. Most people want to pull money out. Most people want to spend money on lifestyle. Most people want to create a monthly revenue spin-off that they can then just spend, get this money spinning off every month so they can just spend it rather than investing everything back in. And the key to all of this is understand money math and be able to reverse engineer the millionaire marketing or millionaire money formulas to get to the million. Understand transaction size and how important it is in getting all of this to actually work. And then understanding how much runway we need to scale this thing, and then having what is the word for it? Having I don't know what the word is for it, but being willing to basically not take any money off the table and continue to work and not changing the lifestyle and not spending any of the money, and just every single month rolling the money over again and again and again. And if you do that, that's how you scale something. And then, so basically saying, I'm not going to take any money off the table until we're at 1.5 million. The thing is, if you get to 1.5 million, you could take $500,000 off the table, and you could still have $1 million to continue to blow the thing up. See, and you could be doing that every single month and still have that 500,000, rather than investing 10 and making 30, and then taking the 20 off the table, and then every month spending the 10 to make 30 and living on 20,000 a month. Just invest for a year or 2 years. You can take $500,000 off the month and still be blowing the thing up. And that's what I think most people don't think about, as far as being willing to invest back in and roll the money over and get a snowball going downhill, and basically having the consistency and being willing to invest the money and not take anything off the table until you have really blew the thing up, until you scale. Like, my goal is 2 comma club, and I might even change that. It might even be 2 records or 2 million before I take a penny off the table. Now, the problem is, like I said, most people, as their income goes up, their lifestyle goes up. And if you can fix it to where you don't immediately start spending all the money, you can do really, 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 really well. Much, much better in 12 to 18 months if you take no money off, than if you start trying to spend 20 or 30 or 40,000 a month and basically changing the lifestyle as the income comes in. The other problem with that is that it's very, very difficult to get things to work at scale. And so if you invest 10 and make 30, and invest 10 and make 30, and invest 10 and make 30, and you're pulling that 20,000 out every month, the problem is, as your income goes up, your debt also goes up, your lifestyle goes up, your debt goes up, and you get to the point where you actually need the 20,000 every single month. And then what happens is, one month you don't make the 30, you only make 25. Now you take 20 off, and instead of spending 10,000 on ads that month, you're only spending 5. And then, or what happens is, one month you just have a bad month and the money you don't make anywhere near as much money as you need to make. And now you're in trouble lifestyle wise. And then the other thing is, you don't have the money to replace the money that you didn't make. You don't have the money to continue to invest the 10,000 every month. And so that's another issue that a lot of people struggle with. And so, like I said, you got to have the fortitude, the consistency, the willing to basically say, I'm wanting to blow this thing up. So, like, if you hear, like, I'll give you some examples. Bill Gates did not take a day off. He did not take a day off of work for 10 years. He worked 7 days a week for 10 years. Bill Gates was notorious for sleeping in his office under his desk. I think that Jeff Bezos also did something very similar. Elon Musk talks about working 80 to 120 hours a week. Now, granted, and I think it's fair to say that these people are not, well, first of all, they're not exactly digging ditches. And a lot of what their work is meetings and travel. And so I'm not saying they're on vacation, but I'm saying it's a lifestyle that's far beyond what most of us already have, right? And so even though he might be working 120 hours a week, a lot of that is vacations, very, very expensive dinners, meetings with very, very high level people, but he's still controlling all of that. But like I said, you've got to be willing to put the time in, and you got to be willing to reinvest back in. And I think that's what you need to think about. But I'm going to end out for now. Do me a huge favor, like and subscribe. If you haven't liked yet, like the page, subscribe to my channel. Do me a huge favor. You can go to if you go to the top of my page, I think you can find my Facebook group. You can join my group. You can also sign up for you can start following me or become friends with me on Facebook, and that'd be great. But I appreciate you all being here, and we will see you tomorrow, and thanks a lot.